Bright Duty. Every student matters.
So students, next topic is evolution. Try to understand what is evolution. The definition is, evolution is formation of new types of organisms from the existing ones through modifications. The modifications are changes in structure, function, features, all such things. So because of these changes, new types of organisms are formed slowly and gradually. This process is called evolution. Now, how are these modifications caused? Modifications or the changes, actually, they are the accumulation or collection of variations. We studied about variations in the chapter reproduction. I told you in asexual reproduction, the chromosomes and the nucleus, they divide into two daughter cells. So during this process, the genetic material is passed on to the two cells. So since only one parent is involved, the variations are very less. But in sexual reproduction, what happens? There are thousands of biochemical processes during DNA copying, then the gamete formations, then there are the gametes, they fuse together, the male and the female gamete, they fuse together. So there is a new pairing of chromosomes. So during all these processes, there are chances of some errors, okay, in any of these biochemical processes. These errors leads to variation. Variation means the some character of the new organism will be different from the parent. So it is very common in sexual reproduction. So the variations can be useful, harmful or neutral. Try to understand. The useful variations are those which help the organism to survive in that atmosphere, in that environment. They help them to adapt to the environment. For this, I can give you two examples. Consider some bacteria. Okay, the bacteria, some of the bacteria, they had the variation that they could adapt and they could live in the high temperatures. They were resistant to heat. Now, if the temperature of the environment rises, what will happen? These bacteria, which had the adaptation, which had the useful variation, they'll survive. And the other bacteria, which did not have these variation, they'll die if the temperature is high. So such variations which help the organism to live and to adapt in the environment are useful variations. Another example, for example, some of the giraffes, all right, they had a longer neck, as compared to the parents. So at that time, there was a lot of competition for the food among herbivorous animals. They were all feeding on the grass and the leaves on the lower branches. So due to this competition, there was scarcity of food. Now those giraffes which had longer neck, they could reach the higher branches. So for them, the competition of food was very less. They had enough food from the higher branches. So those giraffes could survive and pass on this variation to the next generation. Gradually, they could survive because they had enough food. So such variations are called useful variations because they help the organism to adapt and to survive in the environment. On the other hand, some variations are harmful. They are just the opposite. They do not help the organism to survive. So such variations, mostly they are wiped off because such organisms, they die gradually as they cannot adapt to the changes in the environment. Now, to understand the theory of evolution and how new species, new types of organisms are formed, I will give you an illustration. Let us consider there was a small population of red beetles living in the bushes. Now, these red beetles, due to some changes in the genetic material during DNA copying, some of them became green in color. Now, this green color, it is because of the change in the genes. So, this green color will be transferred to the next generation, generation after generation. So, the population of the green beetles also increased. Now, what happened? These beetles were fed upon by crows. So the green beetles, they had the advantage. They could camouflage with the green leaves. So crows could not see them. So crows were feeding on the red beetles. This led to decrease in the population of the red beetles, but the green beetles had the useful variation. So their population increased. Slowly what will happen? all the red beetles will be wiped out. They will be fed upon by the crows, and a new species of green beetles is formed. This phenomena is called natural selection. Alright, nature selects those organisms which have the useful adaptation, which can survive in that environment. There was a scientist or naturalist named Darwin. He studied in detail about the theory of evolution. He traveled to faraway distances to South America and to faraway islands. He collected many samples of living flora and fauna. He also collected many fossils. Then he studied all those samples which he collected, and he presented all this theory in a book called Origin of Species. In that book, he gave the theory of natural selection or theory of survival of the fittest. Those organisms who are fit, who can adapt to the environment, they'll survive. And those who are not fit, like those red beetles, they cannot adapt to the environment, they'll be wiped out, they'll disappear from the earth. This is theory of natural selection given by Darwin. Alright, let us take another instance. A small population of red beetles was living in the bushes. Now, due to some change in the DNA mutation, what happened? Some of them became blue in color. This blue color was passed on from one generation to the other because it was an inherited trait. So, the population of blue was increasing. Then what happened? Suddenly, by accident, an elephant was passing by and he stamped on those bushes. So, many of the beetles were killed during that accident. What happened? By chance, under the feet of the elephant, the red beetles died. All the red beetles died. What remained were blue beetles. So, these blue beetles, when they reproduce, they'll pass on the blue color to the offsprings. So, slowly, the red beetle will be wiped out and we will have a good population of the blue beetles. This phenomena is known as genetic drift. In this case, the blue beetle did not have any useful variation. It did not help in adapting to the environment. It is a neutral variation. Alright, but they could survive just by chance. It is a chance survival because one gene pool was completely wiped off due to an accident. Another gene pool survived just by chance. This is called genetic drift, when one gene is removed and the other gene remains by chance. So, such genetic drift is possible in small population when a neutral or even a harmful gene survives for many years just by chance. Now, the third type of instance I'm giving you, for example, a small population of beetles was living in a bush. That bush was attacked by a plant disease. Now, the quality and the number of the leaves decreased. So, there was scarcity of food, not enough food for all the beetles. So, the weight and the size of the beetles decreased. They became thinner. Alright. So, next generation also was very thin because there was not enough food. After some time, what happened? There were enough leaves. Alright. So, the size of the beetles will increase again because enough food was available. So, this change in size was not an inherited trait. It did not cause any change in the genes. It was an acquired variation or acquired trait. Right? So, what are acquired traits and inherited traits? These two traits, you can see, they are examples of inherited traits, but this is an example of acquired trait. Inherited traits are those which cause change in the genetic structure of an organism, and it is passed on from parents to offsprings generation after generation. But on the other hand, acquired traits are those which we acquire during our lifespan. For example, if you decide to become an athlete, what you will do? You will start having good diet, you will work on your body, so your body will become muscular. This is an acquired trait. It changed your structure of your cell or the functioning of the cell, but it did not cause any change in your genetic structure. So, this trait, that is the trait of a muscular body, will not be passed on to the next generation. It will disappear after the death of the organism. So, such traits are called acquired traits. So, acquired traits are those which cause changes in the cell or the functioning of tissue and organ, but they do not cause any change in the genetic structure, and such acquired traits are not passed on from one generation to the another. They disappear after the death of the organism. On the other hand, inherited traits are those traits which cause change in the genetic structure, and they are passed on from one generation to the another, one after the other. In humans, for example, the color of the skin, the height, color of the eyes, color of hair and texture of the hair, all these traits are inherited traits. This we inherit from our parents. But if I learn music, this is an acquired trait. This I acquired during my lifespan. So I hope it is clear the difference between inherited traits and acquired traits. Now the next topic is origin of life on Earth. We studied how new species were formed, but how life originated on Earth, how it all started. None of us was there. We don't have any proof how the life actually started on Earth. So many scientists, they gave many theories that when Earth was formed, it was very hot, and when it was cooling down, there were inorganic materials present on the Earth like methane, hydrogen gas, ammonia, water. So organic compounds from which living organisms are made, they were formed from inorganic material. The inorganic material like methane, hydrogen, ammonia, they formed the organic material. This organic material came together, a lining was formed, a covering was formed. This gave rise to unicellular organism. And gradually over the years, by the process of evolution, different types of organisms evolved out of that. There were two scientists, Miller and Urey, that is Miller and Urey. What they did, they created a situation which was similar to the situation of the Earth millions of years back when the Earth was cooling down. So they created a spark apparatus and they put hydrogen, ammonia, methane and water into that apparatus. That apparatus was given a high electric voltage, was passed on through that apparatus. That the gas mixture of gases was boiled at very high temperature, then cooled down to very low temperature. So after a week, it was observed that 15% of the carbon in methane got converted into organic compounds, that is sugar or amino acids, fatty acids. These are organic compounds from which all living organisms are made. So 15% of the carbon, inorganic carbon, was converted into organic carbon when such conditions were made when the Earth was cooling down. So this was a proof that initially the organic compounds were formed from inorganic material, and slowly these organic compounds, they came together and they formed unicellular organisms, and slowly over millions of years new organisms developed. This is the theory of origin of life on Earth. Now another topic is speciation. Speciation means the formation of new species, new types of organism. I hope you understand what is a species. So all the human beings are one species because we have same genetic pool, right? So there are millions of species on the Earth. So the process of formation of new species is called speciation. Now, Darwin tried to explain various methods through which new species were formed. First one is this natural selection. As I just told you, those organisms which had the useful variation, they were able to adapt to the environment and they were selected by the nature. That led to formation of new species. The second reason for new species formation is genetic drift, in which the organism had a variation, but because of chance survival, one of the gene pool was eliminated, the other survived by chance, and it grew into a new species, right? The third method of new species formation given by Darwin was geographical isolation. All right. So consider a population of a species living there. Now what happened? this population was divided into two because of a physical barrier, like a mountain, a valley, or a water body formed in between this population. So they were separated into two different populations. So these two populations could not contact each other. So there was no reproduction or transfer of gene pool among them. So these two populations, slowly what happened, they developed their own variations. They changed after years, they changed so much drastically in behavior, in characters, in features, that even if they were brought together, they could not interbreed. They could not reproduce together. There were so many variations, different types of variations in this. So this led to formation of two different species. So that is geographical isolation, when there was a physical barrier between one population which separated them, and both the populations, they led to formation of two different species. Another process could be the genetic isolation. Genetic isolation means there were certain very drastic changes or which are in DNA formation, which we call as mutation. So among one population, there were some drastic changes in few number of organisms. So those organisms could not reproduce with the given population. For example, change in the number of chromosomes. So those which had changed number of chromosomes could not reproduce with the rest of the population. So they formed a new kind of species. They reproduced among themselves and they led to formation of new kind of species. So how new species were formed? There could be four processes. First is natural selection. Those organisms which had useful variations, they could adapt to the environment. They led to formation of new kind of species. Second is genetic drift, in which there is a chance survival of a given gene pool, which led to formation of a new species. The third process could be geographical isolation, in which there was a geographical physical barrier between the two populations, and both these populations had different kinds of variations, which led to formation of two different species. And fourth is genetic isolation, which was caused due to mutation or drastic changes in the gene pool, so that the two populations could not reproduce and led to formation of two different species. Let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is evolution and classification. How are they related? As you know, classification is dividing the organisms into groups and subgroups depending upon their similarities and dissimilarities. Those organisms which have similar characters or features, they are placed in one group, and those which are different, they are placed in separate groups. So study of classification actually helps us to study the theory of evolution, and study of evolution helps us to classify the organisms. For example, if let's say leopard and a tiger, like they have many similarities, many similar characters. So we place them in one group under classification. While on the other hand, let's say frog and a tiger, they have drastically different characters. So they are placed into two separate groups under classification. So if the organisms are placed under two different classifications, two different groups, then it suggests that they have two different ancestors. They developed from two different ancestors. And if they have same characters, that means they developed from a single ancestor, but they adapted different variations, different features. So this way, evolution and classification are actually related. The next topic is, what are the sources of evidence for this theory of evolution which we just discussed? The first evidence is the presence of homologous organs. Before I tell you what are homologous organs, try to analyze and differentiate. Now consider our structure of a forelimb. Forelimbs are our hands. So we have 5 digits, then some thin bones, the wrist, then there are two thin bones here, radius and ulna, and one strong bone after that. So if you compare the forelimb of frog, lizard and humans, alright, so frog, lizard and human, let's compare. So basic structure is the same. We all have 5 digits, then the wrist, the 2 small bones and 1 strong bone. So basic structure in the forelimbs of frog, lizard and man are same. But externally they look different. And we use it for different functions. Humans use it for clutching things or holding something, while frogs use it for hopping to getting the strength during hop. Lizards might use it for creeping and going up the wall. So homologous organs are those organs of different organisms which have same basic structure, but they may appear different externally and they are used to perform different functions. So the presence of homologous organs suggests that these organisms, since they have basic similar structure, they originated from the same one ancestor. One ancestor developed these different types of organisms. The presence of homologous organs suggests the theory of evolution. The second one is the presence of analogous organs. Now first let us try to differentiate between the wings of birds, bats and insects. So if you see closely, the wings of insects, they are made up of very thin membrane made up of chitin. While the wings of the birds, they have bony structure with feathers in between. And thirdly, the wings of the bats, they look like digits, they look like fingers with skin in between, the extended skin in between the fingers. It appears like that. So basic structure of the wings of birds, bats and insects is totally different, but they use it for the same function, that is for flying. So the presence of analogous organs suggests that there were different ancestors, different organisms, but they have similar types of variations. They had developed wings which helped them to fly. So they had useful variations which helped them to adapt to the environment. So different ancestors had similar types of variations. Presence of analogous organs suggests that. The third evidence is the fossils. I hope you know what are fossils. Fossils are the dead remains or the impressions of the organisms which died millions of years back. Right? So how were fossils formed? When an organism died, sometimes they were swayed into the water body like sea. Then they were buried under the sand. So sometimes what happened, the conditions were such like there was no oxygen there. So the bodies did not decompose, but they were buried. This led to the formation of sedimentary rock. So when these rocks were dug, after the digging, what was found? The remains of dead animals or their impressions. So by studying fossils, it was easy to analyze the theory of evolution. There is a very good example of Archaeopteryx. This is a fossil which looks like a bird. It has wings, it could fly, but it had also the features of reptiles like a lizard. So it is a mixed feature of a lizard and a bird. It is commonly known as a flying lizard. Right. So presence of such types of fossils suggests that birds actually evolved from reptiles. Some of the reptiles developed wings and had a useful variation and they could fly. So presence of homologous organs, analogous organs and study of fossils tells us that evolution occurred in a very slow and gradual manner. We can even find the date when the age of the fossil by certain methods like carbon dating or radioactive dating. We can find how old a given fossil is. So all these studies tell us the theory of evolution.